Hey there, let's talk about direct seeding in the wintertime and how you can get really good germination. But you probably noticed at the intro of this video that there's a really cool product, and we'll get to that a little bit later. That is today's show sponsor, and I will talk all about that and how that's being implemented on my farm here and how that relates to getting good germination in the wintertime. So a lot of cool stuff to talk about here, and just to give you guys a little bit of context, I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, Zone 7B, if you're not familiar with the channel here. And this is what we're looking at in mid-February, and all of these are brand new beds that were seeded out mostly in January, so you can sort of see what's going on here. Direct seeding in the wintertime is possible. Obviously it depends on where you are and what your temperatures are, but there's a lot of things here to consider to help you guys get good germination with direct seeding crops so you can get really nice full beds like this. The first thing, let's get right into it here, is the temperature. And I know that's kind of an obvious one, but you want to make sure that the soil is going to be the right temperature for the crops that you're growing or the seeds that you're trying to get to germinate. Now, a lot of times you can force germination, like if you're doing transplants inside and then bringing them outside in the summer or the winter, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about direct seeding in here. So you want to make sure that you keep the soil temperature warm enough to get the seeds to germinate. And really the best way to do that is by using a caterpillar tunnel, a high tunnel, or a greenhouse. That's the best way of ensuring that you're going to keep the soil temperature up. But this could also be done with low tunnels or row cover and things like that. On top of that, you want to make sure you get your timing right. Now, if you look at the weather forecast and you see you have a streak of really, really cold weather, like don't direct seed then. But if you see you might have a week or two where it's going to warm up a little bit and maybe some sunny days where you can heat up your tunnels, that might be a good time to plant. So plan ahead and make sure you get the warmest possible days so you can get your seeds to germinate. Another good thing is if you have a tunnel, just be really good about closing the tunnel up in the early afternoon or at least middle of the afternoon so that the sun will be warming up the tunnel and trapping as much heat in here as possible. It's not necessarily the temperature in the tunnel that matters. You're going to be worrying about the soil temperature. That's what's going to matter. So temperature, that's a big one. Another big thing to consider when trying to get stuff to germinate in the wintertime is the varieties of crops that you're growing. I know it seems also another kind of obvious one, but there's certain crops that will probably grow better in the wintertime and germinate in the cool weather. So, right next to me here we have kale and arugula and spinach. Those are all great things to grow. A lot of greens and brassicas will grow really well in the wintertime. Just keep in mind that things grow really slowly in the wintertime, and germination rates will be 2 or sometimes even 3 times longer than you expect. So you have to be patient. This isn't a time you're really rushing crops out, but if you need to do some direct seeding in the wintertime, you definitely can do it. All of this was seeded out in January, and we're in an unheated tunnel. So keep in mind what crops you're trying to grow, right? You can't put a tomato in the ground and expect it to pop up and germinate, but a lot of greens and brassicas and stuff like that will do pretty well. So just to show you some other crops that I got going on here, we have tatsoi, Tokyo bacana, carrots, and mustard greens. And so these are other crops that I direct seeded in the middle of the wintertime, and they did great. And so you guys can see that these beds are nice and full. The germination was nice and even, and that's what you're trying to go for if you're growing food for your family or also for a profit. You want to make sure you're maximizing the growth in the space that you have, because any beds that are sitting here empty, you're not making any money, you're not growing any food, you're letting weeds grow, all that kind of stuff. So want to make sure that you get a nice thick stand. Another way to do that is by using a seeder. Let's talk about why a precision seeder like either of these two here are super crucial for getting good germination. There are a lot of reasons why you need to have one of these on your farm or even a serious homestead. But in terms of germination, I think the biggest thing is that they plant at a consistent depth. And what that does is it allows for a consistent germination. And you can't get that by hand. And this also saves a lot of time. But I think that if you are going to be doing any sort of small commercial operation, you need to have a Jang JP1 or any of the other Jangs, but I think the 1 is plenty for most small scale farmers. And also in terms of getting consistent germination, you get a consistent density, speed of planting, and this thing is built so well. And I think this is just a mandatory tool at this point. This is one of the things I really recommend for people getting started, that they invest in a Jang. But in terms of getting good germination, a seeder is going to help so much, because if you're creating a furrow by hand and sprinkling seeds inside, this is going to put it in just at the right depth. So this helps get the kind of germination that you saw in that tunnel. These are all planted with the Jang. All right, let's talk about the next big topic, which is moisture. I think between temperature and moisture, those are the two big things you have to be careful of and really be observant to get good germination. This is a bed of carrots that I only sowed a few weeks ago, and they're looking great. I'm really happy with the germination here. And with moisture, I really recommend that you use your senses. Get down to the soil, feel the soil, Make sure you understand what is moist, what is dry, what is wet. You're looking for a soil that isn't completely dry, because if it's dry, it doesn't have moisture that it needs to germinate. If it's soaking wet, the seeds aren't going to be happy either. And if they do germinate, they're probably not going to survive. So you want something in the middle, and you want to try to maintain that for the first few days or few weeks after you plant the seeds, because that's the most crucial time for the seeds to germinate and grow and sort of come out of the ground. And so that's the most crucial time of getting the moisture right for the seeds to be happy. I use overhead irrigation a lot if you're using an irrigation system to help germinate direct seeded crops. Drip is not going to be helpful in that situation, because drip irrigation drops water kind of directly down and is used for a deep watering of the roots. So if you're trying to get the surface moist to get seeds to germinate, that's not going to be a good option. So you can either use both, or if you have drip, make sure that you're hand watering beds just to make sure that they germinate until you see the plants start to come up. Another thing is, even if you have overhead, you may have some crops in that field block that don't need as much water. So if you're trying to water more heavily to try to get seeds to germinate, the other crops might be overly watered, so you might need to hand water. So I do that a lot. I wouldn't say a lot, but on occasion, especially right now, I don't even have irrigation set up in here. I'm going to be doing that next few months. So what I do is hand water, and there's a couple of things that are a little bit tricky with that, just in terms of equipment, and I got something really cool to show you guys, so let's go check that out. All right, so let's talk about this guy here. This is a sort of automatic garden hose reel system made by a company called Hoselink. And so, full disclosure, this video is sponsored by Hoselink. They did send me this for free. But when they reached out to me and said, do you want to try the product? I said, absolutely, but I'm not willing to take on a sponsorship or talk about this product on this channel unless I think it's a good product. They said, absolutely. So I've been using it for a month now or so I don't have a long-term review for it, but so far I really like it, and so I wanted to share this with you guys. It comes in a 50-foot and an 82-foot version, and it mounts really easily, and it swivels, which is kind of cool, and it's got a handle so you can pop it off pretty easily. Also, it's just got a garden hose leader that attaches to any garden hose, which is super nice. And really the coolest part about this whole thing is that it automatically winds up the hose for you and keeps things in a straight line. So by pulling out the hose, you can just pull it out as long as it can go. And as if for this is the 82-foot version. And I have it mounted, if you guys know my farm, this is like the compost bins here, and I can just pull this to the end of the beds, and I can actually hand water all the beds in the tunnels, in my 100-foot tunnels with this. So it works out really, really well. And so when you have it out and then you want to get the hose to come back in, you just give it a little bit of a yank and it starts to pull itself back in, and it goes back and forth automatically and winds in, and it's awesome. So why do you need something like this? Well, if you guys have ever pulled hoses out into the field or trying to keep them in the walkways, you guys know how much of a challenge it is with a normal hose that's got all the coils and kinks and stuff, and it tends to fall into the beds and break plants and stuff like that. So this comes out really straight, and you can just pull it down the beds, and when you're done, you can just walk it right back. I've had really good luck with this so far, and I actually recommend it. Now, let's talk about a couple of things that I don't like, because I always am super honest with you guys. One thing is that the hose, I think, is too small in terms of the inner diameter. I have 3/4 inch line all over my farm, and this, I don't know what this is, but it's definitely smaller, so it does restrict the flow a little bit. So it may not be perfect for a lot of commercial uses, but definitely gardening uses, greenhouses, like nurseries, or maybe on a patio or in your backyard, this would be awesome. They also have these really cool little quick disconnects, which are nice. I love quick disconnect systems in general. This one has a valve built in. These are all plastic, which they feel really well built, and I think they will last a long time. But in a commercial setting, you might want to go for something that's metal. I don't know, but so far they've been working out great. Also comes with a nozzle. I don't tend to use those garden nozzles very much. I use these guys here, which I talked about this in another video, to help me throw the water really far from just watering beds. But overall, guys, it's really cool. If you're interested in purchasing this product, they have a coupon code for you guys, Satin10, and I'll put a link down below for their website and the coupon code and all that stuff. And go check them out. It's pretty cool. I think it would be good in a lot of applications, and I'm going to continue to use it here on the farm, and it's going to be a great addition for getting that good germination. Another thing to think about when you're putting water out on your beds in the wintertime is try to get it done as early in the day as possible, because a lot of times the water that you're spraying out onto the beds is going to be really cold, and so it's going to take a while to warm up the soil again after you put a bunch of cold water in there. So try to get it done earlier in the day, which is always beneficial. A couple other things to consider is you want to protect your seedlings as soon as they come up out of the ground, and this is directly related to germination, but again, you want to have healthy plants that survive. Keep them protected. So a high tunnel or greenhouse or a caterpillar tunnel, even a low tunnel or row cover can be super helpful. Also keep in mind sunlight, because if your tunnels or wherever you're growing in the wintertime is a little bit shadier than it may be during the summer when the sun is higher in the sky, they're not going to heat up as quickly because they're not getting as much sunlight. And when they also don't have enough sunlight, as soon as they come up out of the ground, they might get a little bit leggy, and that's when the plants stretch out, and then they're not going to be very healthy growing moving forward. So those are the kinds of things you want to consider, and I got to put a little bit of water on these beds today before the sun gets too low in the sky, and close them up to trap some heat because we got some cold weather coming tonight. So protect your seedlings, right? A lot of great information in this video, guys, and hopefully this was helpful for you to consider direct seeding crops in the wintertime and how to get them to germinate and grow. Please take a minute, check out Hoselink, the sponsor for this video. Thank them for sponsoring the video. Hope you enjoyed this. Thanks so much for watching. Please hit subscribe if you're not already, and we'll see you in the next one.